Okay, at this time, I'd like to call to order Port of Newport Commission Budget Priorities Work Session at 6:06 p.m. Are there any changes to the agenda? No changes heard. Any public comment? No public comment?
Not that I'm
Okay.
aware of it.
Let's go right into review budget priorities.
So this is an opportunity for to review what the staff has set the priority as, and then for the commission to look at those priorities, rearrange them in order that you think is appropriate, add any that you think we have missed, or say, hey, that one doesn't work for us in this upcoming fiscal year. What I've done is in your packet, you'll have 6 pages, I believe it is, and ranging from 1 to 16 for the general operating fund. And then you'll have 1 page for the NOAA. And again, we've put 1 through 16, 1 being the highest. And we're looking for input changes or additions that we might have missed. Paula, would you like to add?
Yes, I would. Thank you. So one thing, when we put this together, you may see some repeated projects that we had on for this year. And the reason being is that sometimes we may finish a project the year that we originally intended, sometimes we don't. And sometimes it's because there's more work involved, or it sometimes is related to chasing grants and funding, and we just, can't make it through that year. So all we did is we took that same amount that we had budget for this year, and we're putting into next year. Some of those we may end up finishing it, and then, of course, it doesn't really hurt us in any possible way. The thing about some of these projects, a lot of them, where it's a desirable project that we are looking for monies, and sometimes it may not happen. But if it's not in this list, if it's not in the budget, we cannot do the project, or we have to then come back, and it just gets more complicated. So it's just easier for us to put all the projects here with the concept that some of those we will look for grant, and we may or we may not complete them. We always hope we do, obviously. But this also, and I'm saying this because I know Jeff is always concerned about this, and which he should. That does not touch our reserves. Okay, whatever projects we do, and that's why we have a priority list. If we could do everything, we would do everything, but sometimes even the funding may fall short for some of the projects if we don't get the additional funding for that matter. And with that said, we do make sure that we have that $1 million reserve. As a matter of fact, I think we have more like $1.2 million reserve.
1.2 million is what I put aside. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How much?
1.2.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So that's the only thing I would like to add. And so Mark, Aaron, and I sat down and went over the projects that you see here. You probably won't see some real big projects that we wish you could do, and one of the reasons is because obviously some of them needs plan before we can move on to the big ticket items. So we are focusing again on completing some, like for instance, the Port Dock 7 replacement. We do have to go through a plan, because the plan would include some engineering permits and things like that. And when you apply for millions of dollars for such a big project, you got to show that it's a feasible project. So that plan will cover that. So similar items that we have, we are requesting for plan this year. It's the same situation where eventually, hopefully in the next the following year we'll be able to put some of those big ticket items in the next budget. Also, also a reminder that some items that we have budget originally for the next 2-3 years, we have combined, like the South Beach Load Center. We combine all into one single year, and we're doing everything this year. So, as originally when we look 5-year forecast, that's no longer there. So that's all I have to add.
And we will have at some point a meeting to talk about the 5-year projects list. I keep updating that. If you see within the description something like contract support services or fund services, when you get the budget which will be either late tonight or tomorrow morning, you won't see the project actually listed because it's included in the contractor support services category or the professional services category, but you have it on a priority here.
Okay. Any other comments from the staff? And Aaron, do you have anything to add, or we can go right into, because Aaron's mic went off.
I just we sat down and went through the priorities, so they are what they are.
Okay.
Be happy to add any kind of answers or input that anybody needs as we go along.
Okay. I see Gil has his mic off and his hand up. So Gil.
Yeah. So I see this last column. I have 2 questions. The last column is funding note. So I assume that's a comment regarding that the dollars will be from outside new dollars that you're seeking, whether it's from a loan or a grant or it says some of the funds are from outside that you're pursuing. Is that correct? And therefore, what I assume that the remaining money that's in the 2022 column are from internal funds that we have already. We don't need to go out for outside grants except for the amount that's in the funding note. Is that assumption correct?
Not necessarily, Gil. There are some of the items that we moved from this year to next year that we're still working on the funds. Like, for instance, the admin building, we don't know if we're going to do this or not, but we did apply. So we're still waiting for the approval from the state, but we're also still waiting for a better estimate at this point.
Right.
And like the grant that we're looking for the Port Dock 7 replacement plan, that is we're still looking for, but we are working both with Business Oregon and the EDA on that. Hopefully we have something soon. So there are some funds that we will still be looking for, but when we get down to the actual budget, I'm sure Mark will have more details. Usually he has a list of, what funds we're looking for, outside funds, and which ones we use in general funds. The ones with the general funds are the ones, obviously, that will impact us the most. And then when we put those funds into those projects, we still got to make sure we have that reserve. So Mark, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the dollar amount listed in that column, Gil, is the total cost of the project,
Right. Mm-hmm.
regardless of funding source.
Right. I understand that.
Okay.
But what I was trying to do was determine which funding sources, which of these projects have external funding sources not secured. They're not from the general fund yet.
Yeah,
and you have comments in some of these. So I was wondering, if I don't see a comment, then do I assume that we're using primarily operating funds, or is that the incorrect assumption?
No, that's correct. That is the correct assumption at this point.
Oh, it is the correct assumption.
It is the correct assumption. And, we may get a grant on any of these, which will reduce our costs. Like,
right. Okay. Okay. But for now, you're going forward. If I don't see a funding note that we'll be using operating funds, we could get additional funds from grants, et cetera. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Correct.
And then finally, the order before we talk about priority. whenever you see numbers next to priorities, you wonder what the rule is, right? Is there a rule or standard here on how to think about these? So I don't think we should think about them, or you tell me if I'm wrong, that, well, we can't do project 13, priority 13, unless we get all of 1s and 2s and 3s done first. That's not what this is about. This is saying these are ones that we really need to get done this year. They're critical. As we move down here, some of these may extend longer. The intent is to work on them so that no one misunderstands what we mean by the idea of priority. Like if we do some project 14, but we didn't do 3 or 4 or 5, and people are confused by that and go, why did you do that? Because those were higher priority.
Go ahead, Paul.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, we may be able to get to the lower project priorities, especially if we get grant funding, before the higher priorities. So you're correct on your assumption, Gil, that the idea we'd like to get 1 through 5 done this year, but there's no guarantee. The reality is we don't have the bandwidth to do all these projects this year. We just don't have the manpower.
Yeah,
So-
the reality is, when the lower the project, obviously we really gonna push as hard as we can to make it happen. We'll give them a priority in our time and pushing for the funds and things like that. And then especially the ones that we use in general funds, but then of course there's always the ones that we're using outside funding, even though they may be a lower priority. It is something that we have to think about it because, and for instance, okay, say one of the number 1 priorities for us, which is the replacement for Port Dock 7 plan. It's supposed to be somewhere around a couple $100,000. Say that we don't get, maybe we get Business Oregon to help us a bit, but they can only do 50,000. And then we don't get the EDA fund. Well, there's 150,000. Should we make that a priority as of general fund use? So it may be something that you may choose to let us move forward with because it's really needed, so things like that, it's something we got to think about it. Obviously, we would like to get outside funding as much as possible, but it is such a priority that it is one item that we may really consider using general funds, even if it's for the entire project, just so it gets done. So.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with the understanding. It's more of communicating to our stakeholders about when you put priority numbers next to it, how should they interpret those? And if they see things happen in different order than the way the numbers suggested a ranking, it can raise questions. So it's just a question of how we communicate our priorities and make sure they understand that these are all important projects. So they are important, right? And it's a question of which ones are really critical to get done right away versus those that will take more planning time, et cetera.
Absolutely. We may have something that is one of the last ones in our list, and we may get some grant funds that just show up, and we can apply for it. And if we get it, sometimes they have a deadline. So that means we have to get that project moving quicker than others.
All right, thanks. Thank you for that. Thanks.
Comment on that. Does the prioritization that we're looking at now does not show up as a public document in our budget? Is that correct?
It is not in our budget. That is correct. It's not
That's
a part
right.
of
Okay, thank you.
You will see many of these listed in the capital item, but this document doesn't show up.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so the public won't see this document at all. And okay, I
They'll
understand.
see
This is
the
for
items, but not the
internal
numbers.
use only.
Well,
If they requested it, they can get it.
Right.
It is a public document, but we don't post it.
It's not our posted
Right,
budget
it's not
as far as
posted.
the
Right.
numbers.
Right.
Correct.
But last year we did in our general packet, though, we did have all the list of the capital projects, and there was some sort of ordering to it. So I would imagine we would do something similar, Mark.
We can, we don't have to. That's our option. They are listed within the budget again, under capital projects for those that are capital projects. We can have that discussion. I'm glad to do it either way.
But my point is just adding the phone. If you do that, Mark, when you put out priority ranking or order, just explain what that means to the general public so they understand how we're using that, what that ranking really means. So that we don't surprise anyone with projects that are done before other projects that were ranked higher or lower, and there's no confusion. Thank you.
If I may,
Good point. Karen?
if I may, this meeting packet is of course public, as will the discussion from this meeting be.
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't implying that. I was just wondering when we publish our budget, are we prioritizing each line item with a number? I guess what I was thinking.
Well, and right now, this is just a draft document, so it's just, these numbers could change.
Right. Well, Walter, I believe you're up next. Your microphone went off, and I think you probably have some questions or comments.
No, and if we're just doing general discussion, the only thing I would say is there's one project that's pretty important that hasn't made it on here, and that's replacing the public pier. That's going to be another big expense, and also we can be able to get a lot of mitigation credit from that. But it's an iconic piece of Newport. It'd be really bad for us to see that thing fail and then not allow people to get out there.
In our previous discussion, Walter, we really talked about kind of adding that because if we're going to be doing the plan for Port Dock 7 replacement, we're really hoping to tie those two together and have that further discussion. That way they can include that on the conversation, and we can kill two birds with one stone. And that's what we had in mind as we're doing that. I understand it is definitely it's in our feasibility study, in our plan for the port plan. So it is something we know we need to do and we intend to do. Is just that it would make more sense because, again, the mitigation credits and everything that we try to tie those in. Hopefully we can do it through the replacement plan.
So Paula, I could do CM project for Port Dock 7 replacement and public pier, just added as part of that planning. So it's noted that we are doing that. Does that work?
That's fine. Because I think on the scope of work, when we do this, I mean, there's only so much money to go around, obviously, with that budget, but that was the intent, is to tie those two together to an extent.
We could get quite a bit of momentum around that. We can get the city to put in Travel Oregon, and we can get a lot of other money other than ours to put into that project. So, I mean, like I said, it's just something we need to keep on the front burner.
Right. Travel Oregon this year, it's dry. They really dry. They got almost nothing. They lost a lot of their monies because obviously the hotel taxes and things like that. So some projects that would depend on that, it's kind of it wouldn't be doing too well, but there may be other sources as well. I can't remember which one, but when we look for instance, to the RV annex, there was another source besides Travel Oregon. I think we may not be able to count with Travel Oregon for at least a couple of years. That's what I see.
Well, I mean, we've got R&E grants through ODFW. I mean, there's quite a bunch of money out there.
Yeah,
and it's public. Fishing is a big. People are willing to spend money on that, especially through the state.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission? I had Just a couple questions. So we don't foresee any other road expenditures during this budget year?
It's really hard to tell until we are through with this particular project that we're just getting to.
Right.
There is a chance that we may end up doing a phase 3, and that won't. I don't think we have any capital project. It will be a technical grant, therefore it's services.
Okay.
Not tech grant. I mean, I meant technical plan. That we hope we get grants if we get to that point. But as we go through this, it really depends of what kind of solution we come up with. So the intent here with this particular project that we are right now on phase 2 is that the consultant would provide us with some sort of possible solutions. And if we pick one solution that may require additional work, we may end up having to do more engineering work and things like that.
Yeah.
I don't foresee us fixing anything this coming year, quite frankly. I just, and again, even if we were to, it's hard to tell what it is. We have no idea if this is something that we're only going to take a couple $100,000 or $1 million. So we'll know better. And if worse comes to worse, there's something really failing and we need to make a change, and we're just going to have to do a budget amendment.
Okay, yeah, the timing's not right for that one. My other one is looking at, and this might be within your existing budget, but I don't know it is. I don't think it is by the dollar figures I see here. Other workplace improvements. Thinking about, I've been in the commercial marina office many times, and I haven't been in deep in South Beach in a long time, but thinking about COVID and thinking about where they work, eat, clean, and there's 2 people, there's 5 people or 6 people sharing 2 computers, and they all eat in the same place. And thinking about, is there some small item, whether it's a stand-up workstation or a couple stand-up workstations, or a deep clean and a mini break table or something like that for probably the commercial marina and maybe the South Beach Marina office as well, although I'm not as familiar with that one. So just, a little bit of workplace improvement with the safety and efficiency.
Yeah, South Beach has a computer for each staff member and a big table, so they're in pretty good shape.
Okay, it's been a while since I've been there.
South Beach still, Mark, it's not, neither workplace is laid out the way it should be. I think
Right.
Certainly in the long run, we need to redesign both of those workplaces because it has not just, COVID aside,
Right.
the workplaces are not set up to properly create interactions between employees the way they're supposed to. For example, the harbor masters should have an office where they can counsel personnel, where they can talk to people, where they can do all they don't. And right now their offices is their break room. It's their lunch room. It's their everything. So we don't have a very synergistic workplace environment that needs to be fixed. The commercial marina, I believe, has, he added, it's in his regular budget, some room to make some improvements, but I don't think that's the right, I think the right way to do it is to fix it right. We need to redesign those workplaces and get them laid out right. The interim, I have to go back and look at a couple of interim ideas, but he's got some money in the commercial marina to be able to make some changes to that. Over in South Beach, they're getting ready to they need to redo the flooring and completely rearrange that entire office in there. And that's in South Beach's plan this summer. So we're making a couple of improvements here and there, but I don't think it's really enough to fix the level of problems that we've got.
I think eventually we do need to do a little bit more, and I think Jim and I talk a bit about this. But it's hard to do a new admin building in another building like that at the same time. But we did talk, for instance, I think the worst is probably the commercial building, and we probably would have to do a replacement of that and create that situation as as Aaron indicated, that we can't have the harbor master on its own space, and be able to have all the other staff, having their own computers and a little bit more space to congregate. Can talk today. Sorry. And that is something we would like to eventually put in the budget. It's just that we thought with the admin building and that at the same time, it's just, I don't think we can afford that this year, but it is something we probably would like to do it sooner than later.
Yeah. So I guess my comment maybe is there's some interim moves to make the workspace more efficient and more sanitary, and maybe even taking part of the next bay over within all reasonable dollar figures. We don't need to design a new building, but maybe kind of going through and laying out some better workspaces, stand-up workstations. Everyone shouldn't be eating at the same computer everyone's working at.
We'll look
down the
into
road,
that.
we can get to a new building.
Yeah, I think we have enough funds on the general maintenance budget that we can probably play with some of that for the time being. Don't we, Mark? For that kind of expenditure?
All depends on the amount.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a trend every year of the commercial and South Beach over projecting what they'll spend. So there is a little, or quite a bit of room in there.
Yeah, there's going to be room in there for minor things. As far as providing break rooms or places for people to be able, because we got that problem in the office, in the main office too.
Right.
We have it around the entire port pretty much. That none of the port offices are really laid out in the way that they should be, as far as like I said, COVID aside, just on a normal sanitary basis, let alone during this time period. It is I don't know. I've looked at a couple of CTX buildings. I've looked at modulars. I've looked at a few different options that I have some information on that we could probably explore. It's just a matter of how much we want to spend on it right now.
Well, maybe there's a reasonable expense they can go into improving some workplaces, but I'll leave it at that.
Forgive me.
Go ahead. Any other comments or questions before we adjourn? Okay.
Yeah, are we gonna
Go ahead, Walter.
Yeah, other than just general, can we talk about a couple of the priorities I would like to see kind of maybe considered a little bit higher?
Mm-hmm.
Oh shoot, where is it? Asset condition inspection. I think, granted what we've seen going on with Rogue and some of the other ones, I think that one should be a little higher priority than a 5. And then the service dock there in South Beach. We did a pretty sizable increase last year. I know it was to get caught up, but it'd be nice to see some more movement going on down there.
Yeah, I anticipate in general, not always, that the 5s we hope to really push to get done this year, Walter. And I agree with you on that. So we'll talk when Paula's back on Thursday, because you're taking tomorrow off, right, Paula?
Well, partially. I have some meetings, but yeah.
When Paula's back in the office, we'll be glad to sit down and do this. Again, as I mentioned earlier, tomorrow morning probably, I will be sending out the preliminary budget documents for your review. There are some things that have already changed on them, but they were our preliminary. The main thing that changed was the dredging for NOAA. Aaron had made a proposal, and Paul and Aaron talked about that, and we reduced the footprint of that dredging to reduce the cost. So the dredging on the capital list goes away, as far as 250,000 of it at least.
Yeah, I gotta say, Walter, I'm with you on the assessment, and that was something I put on this budget this year because I am tired of seeing things failing, and especially those that we don't know about it. Some stuff it's pretty obvious; we already know it's falling apart, but some stuff we don't know, like what happened South Beach with the drainage issue, the stormwater there. That's a couple 100,000 that was unexpected. And then we had the oil tank situation. So things like that, I think we really need to be more realistic about understanding where things are and not waiting, crossing our fingers, because that's basically what we do on a regular basis. It's like cross our fingers that nothing is going to fail this year, and that's not a good way to manage our assets. So what I would like to do is every year we probably gonna pick few areas. It's gonna be a way too expensive and quite frankly time consuming, because it's not like you can just put somebody out there to do the work. You have to manage that person and share with them what your concerns are. So that is very time consuming. So what I would like to do is pick few areas that we know that may be a little bit more concerning and start in those areas. And every year until we get through all of these, we have a better, and to be quite frank, it may keep on going, because if you pick few areas this year, few areas next year, and keep on going, maybe another 5 years, and you need to redo that assessment again. So, but it is something we need to really keep it on our budget on a regular basis, because we need to, if you have the type of assets we have, we need to understand what their situation. So, and I'll definitely going to make sure that we get some of this done this year.
We're looking to shift from corrective maintenance to more preventative maintenance. That's the best way to put it. Walter, you said the service dock. Yeah, I didn't. You're talking about over in South Beach, right?
The dock? South Beach one. Yeah.
One thing to keep in mind with the service dock was several years ago when I first started, the thing that made me take a close look at this rogue seawall was the state really was on board with funding getting those docks fixed over there. But the thing that prevented us from moving forward with it is that the seawall's right. I mean, basically the pilings that we have that hold that dock in place, they're not real pilings. They're connected to the seawall. So that's what we need to do, is we need to get the seawall up and going, and you put some money into those docks down there that can get us through this interim period until we know what's going on with the seawall, so we can really get them completely fixed and replaced. That's what we want to do.
Okay, anything else on budget priorities?
Just
Jeff or
Just
Jeff,
nice job.
go ahead.
Nice job. That's my comment.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. These are good. These are consistent with all the discussions we've had. So no real major surprises here at all, right? This all reflects the last year and a half of discussion. So yes, very good job. And back on this discussion on assets, besides inspecting them, is really so that we could look at all our assets in some organized way and say, here are the 25 assets. Here is, given their condition, their life expectancy. Exactly. Here's what a first rough cost will be to replace them. Recognizing that it's hard, to give these are rough estimates, but whenever we sit down and do a strategic plan or budgeting, we could look at all of that at one time and see what's really on the horizon. It may be out 2 years, it may be out 20 years, but I think keeping that in mind, because again, for some of these big projects, it's a 5-year time period to go after and get funds. It may even take longer than that on some of the bigger projects. So it takes a lot of planning, and that should always be in the minds of the commissioner and the staff. So we aren't caught with some of the problems we have today with these going, you pull your hair out saying, oh, gee, we got 3 things that are overdue, should have been done a number of years ago.
Yeah, that will help us have a more realistic budget in the future. Exactly for that reason, Gil. What we don't want is we don't want to be caught with 5 major projects in one single year because we're just not prepared enough. So if we understand where things are, we can stagger them, in a way that makes sense. So and I think that will really help us. On the other hand, once we know the condition, it may give us a lot of headaches too, because then you feel like you really need to take care of things, and money is just not going to be there. So there will be a bit of that. So a lot of you are going to be scratching your head and wanting us to do everything, and just keep that in mind, that you're probably going to realize that. And that's typical with ports. Most port assets are old, and that you find in every port you go to, and they're always struggling to figure it out. But the good part is, if we know what things are, we really can work with our funding, our government that help us with funding, and prioritizing some of those things too. So
That's one of the things I was going to point out, Paula, is that one of the unfortunately convenient things about corrective maintenance is that when you have something that's fallen apart and there's no questioning that you have to replace it, and then you get something very tangible out of the replacement, so you have a new pier sitting there. When we shift more towards preventative maintenance, you're going to see a lot more intangible costs, and there will be much more questions when you're sitting back from afar saying, why are we spending this much money on an engineer's report, or why are we spending this much money on a coating or some sort of other application that you don't get an asset out of? You're just maintaining one. So that's something to kind of prepare ourselves for, is that there will be more costs in the future. The more that we identify something, we want to be further out in front of some of these corrosion issues that we have and other things, and it will create costs that previously we just weren't. The port just wasn't paying them. A prime example is property maintenance on the 9 acres at McLean Point.
Yep.
I think for years, mowing, brush cutting, and placement of dredge spoils and things like that, they may have been viewed as just like, why would we spend money on those things? But if you look at the state of the property now with wetlands issues and things like that, in hindsight, we could certainly say that we should have mowed it regularly, and definitely done a lot of these other things to it. So.
And if I can add one more thing, which is probably the negative side of doing this, unfortunately, because there's always a negative side for almost everything you do. And unfortunately, talking to our insurance with SDIS, is like the moment you do know you have some problems, you do have some liability, depending on what that asset is. If there are users and you have something falling apart, there are liabilities that go with it. If you don't know, sometimes you can just shut your eyes and ignore. Once you know, you can't do that. So we have some sort of obligation to addressing some of the issue to an extent, as far as liability goes. So that's the only thing.
But that, just a comment on that, that would be our shorter term issue, right? So yes, because you haven't kept up, you're not sure of the state of all your assets. But suppose you did this, and Aaron, I think you talked about these being costs, but these are, in my view, these are smart costs. These are costs that ultimately in the long run avoid larger costs and larger problems. So they're smart investments. And therefore, in the long term, if you know your usable life, you can replace them before there are costs, and that the insurance company has to bear those costs, right? So it's a question of what we may have to bear in the shorter term to catch up with needed maintenance and understanding the state of our assets. But in the long term, probably the next port manager and the next set of commissioners won't have to face the same set of issues, and the insurance company will be happy with you that you have a good understanding of the state of your assets.
Yeah, we will look bad so the future people look good.
Yeah, that's right. That's okay. We can bear that burden.
Well, that's our goal, to get to a better position and go from reactive to proactive for sure. Can we set the next meeting date for the budget committee? Or do we want to doodle poll that?
It's up to commissioners what they would like to do.
I don't care. I can do it either way. I got my calendar in front of me if you want to try to set a date now. We're all here.
Yeah, I'm fine
We
with
could
that.
also send a doodle poll to the freeholder committee members too.
Right.
Oh, that's right.
So
Yeah,
the variable not involved.
yeah. So
Why
maybe
don't we do a doodle poll?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the rough time frame? How many weeks away, or how many?
The budget's ready to present when the committee can meet.
So next week, the week after?
Yeah, as to finish up the budget message, but that's the last piece.
Okay. So we'll go with a doodle poll for that. And then now you're going to hand out the preliminary budget without a discussion.
We'll send that out via email,
Okay.
either tonight or tomorrow morning. I have it on this computer here, so I'll try to get it out immediately to Karen so she can send it out.
Okay. Thank you. Paula.
As a reminder, I think we're still missing one member for our budget committee, right, Mark?
That is correct.
So there's still an availability for a committee member. So, and we do have that information in our website if anyone is interested. I believe Karen also posted that to Facebook, correct, Karen? Yeah, so at this point, we are short one member.
Okay. We'll put feelers out. If there's no more comments, I'm ready to adjourn the meeting. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. It is 6:48, March 2nd, and we are ready to adjourn the Port of Newport Commission Budget Priorities Work Session.